What is going on, DeRosa Insider community? It's Matt Faircloth. Welcome to the Cash Flow Digest Show. Like I said, my name is Matt. Our company is the DeRosa Group, and we are a real estate company dedicated to transforming lives through real estate. Okay, guys, so listen, we're going to be bringing on a friend of mine here today, someone who's near and dear to my heart. I think a lot of this person, he and I rose into the multifamily world around the same time, hang out in a lot of the same circles and know a lot of the same folks and everything like that. And he is of an A-plus operator that I know. I've never heard an ill word spoken on this human, and he has got a ginormous heart in that. And we're going to be talking about why we do real estate and what we can do with it. And of course, he's a very seasoned operator as well. So we're going to pick his brain a little bit about where the world is going. So guys, give lots of hearts and lots of thumbs up wherever you're watching for our guest today, Whitney Sewell. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, I am excellent, Matt. Great to see you and be on your show.
Good to see you too, brother. Yeah, good to see you too. How is your new year going so far? We're sitting in the middle of January here. How is your 2024 shaping up so far?
Good, really good. I'm excited about it. You know, the new year, you could do this any day of the year, right? But it does give me an excuse to have some downtime and to pull out of the daily grind and to really think through my next year, which I'm actually doing more often now. But it's allowed me to revamp my morning routine, my exercise program, my reading time in the mornings, from my Bible to how I'm educating myself to, all these things that I consider crucial in my daily, weekly, monthly routines. And I'm loving it so far.
That's great. The new year is, I don't know why this is, but it's this total arbitrary time, but everybody uses the new year as a control alt delete moment, right? I do two moments in my life to exit bad habits and re-enter new ones. Those two moments in my life on a yearly basis are my birthday and New Year's, right? It's a good time to reflect, look back, what worked the last year, and what I want to do moving forward. I decided I'm going to start doing for health, right? Let's discuss that. I'm doing a 3-day, you don't have to do this with me, a 3-day fast. So no food for 3 days, once a month. I already did it in January, and it is my current goal, Whitney, to do it on a monthly basis for 3 days. What do you think?
Good for you. No, I've heard a lot of positive things about fasting. And so, yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. I'm not sure that I'm going to do it for 3 days, but I am very strict about my nutrition. Let me correct that. My wife is very strict about our nutrition. And,
yeah, there you go.
And so I'm very blessed that she handles most of that. But yeah, I'm not probably fasting for 3 days. At least
no, I'm not gonna do it. Right. She's too good of a cook, right? Yeah. In all true fairness, I'm not eating anything. I'm doing this thing called the lemonade diet, guys, where I drink lemonade, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup concoction. It's about in a gallon jug, and I drink that for 3 days straight. And it's just enough to give your body just enough sugar to make you not hungry enough, right? You're still hungry, but it empties out your stomach and just helps your body reposition itself.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. It's a cleanse, let's say, right? So reflecting back on 2023, Whitney, what are some of your, we all have aha moments, right? I certainly have mine too. What are some lessons learned, highs you got? I mean, lows are not even worth reflecting on because it's about what you learn from the lows, right? So what are some things and ahas that you get when you look back on 2023 for you and your company, LifeBridge?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, and most may not even say this, I don't know, but one of the biggest things for us, Matt, was going back to third-party management. And so we brought management all in-house. We built a management company, and we learned many hard lessons through that, to say the least. But a lot of good things, right, that have made us a lot better. But we decided it was better to go back to third party. But even when we started our internal management company, we said, 1 year we're going to reassess. We're going to go out and interview management companies, third-party management companies, and just see and compare how they think they can still manage compared to how we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And when we did that, it was just telling that, hey, we owe it to our investors that to go back to third-party management. And again, that's not just any third-party management, of course. There were some specific ones that we interviewed, and we're very strategic, obviously, about who we went back with. But a couple of things that I don't think we were just really large enough yet, and we're too scattered. If we were all in one place, if all of our properties were really close, then I think we would have been, a lot better off as well. But anyway, that's probably one of the biggest learning things. Hiring's been a big thing for us. We've hired a couple of key people this year that have helped turn us in a big way, in a good way. Help us really to put in more just structure, corporation like structure that we've not had yet, right? It's we've had some of it, but at a very elementary level, I think, and we have done things over the last year to that have helped us to grow corporately in a big way that I think is positioning us very well for bigger growth in the future. And so it's been a good year for that, right? It's been really slow for us on the acquisition side, as I'm sure you can imagine. But so it's been a great year for that.
We didn't do any deals last year, brother. I didn't do it. DeRosa struck out. We had 280 at bats. 280, bro. Can you believe? And we whiffed on the ball every time, just couldn't get there to the asking price that folks had.
I think you're better off because of it, but
I think we won, right? I think that's a
right.
good thing. A few comments, man, and it's all good. There's just different transitions and things that work for different companies. It's funny for us. We took on self-management. So we're actually, as you're over here like, oh man, I hope that doesn't happen to us, that it didn't work out for Whitney. I hope it works for us. But we ended up taking management back from third-party management companies and brought it in-house. And I know it works for some people and doesn't work for others. And the only question I have is, did you have to go back to the PM company you were using before and then have like a kiss and makeup moment? Or did you reshift? Like, hey, listen, we were just kidding about the whole thing. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And so us managing internally was light years better than what we had as a third party before we brought it in-house. Okay. We grew during that time as well. And so it allowed us to, and actually we made some connections to some bigger third-party management firms who probably wouldn't have looked at us before, right? Wow. And now they were willing to, now that we knew some people ultimately, right, that would help make us a connection to them. They're probably used to, some of their lower end clients probably have, 10 to 20,000 units, right? Yeah. And so they were able to, they still were willing to work for us, and just with some of the connections that we had. And so it was very worthwhile to go and take that back to third party. We would never have left internal management, self-managing, if we had to go back to the company that was doing it before.
Oh yeah, right. Because it's like, you would have had to run a really, really bad ship if you had to go back. You know what? I know that was bad, but it was certainly better than it was with us doing it, right? So I get it. So there was like them, then there's you guys, then there's next level. So that's right. Almost like a graduation celebration point. That's great. So let's transition here, because you and I have talked a lot about this at conferences and everything like that. This is something that's near and dear personally to my heart in that. But you and I have talked about this transforming lives through real estate and getting that right. Why you and I do what we do. Now, you could very well have a Ferrari sitting in your driveway, but you have never, that I've ever seen, do a social media post about it or whatever. Hey, look at my amazing house. Look at my car. And you could do this too and invest in real estate so you can have a Ferrari, right? I know you're not that guy, right? You're not a flashy guy, but you do very well. And you're able to take a lot of what you do in this business and transition it into a passion that's perhaps a higher calling, if I could even say it so deeply as that about you. Would you mind sharing a bit of if I dare say, your why that you do real estate investing? Because it's certainly not so you can have 19 cars, sitting in a car for every day of the month sitting in your driveway, right? Why do you do what you do? And tell us more about it.
I appreciate the question, Matt. No doubt something I'm passionate about, and I know you as well. This why, this mission has changed things for us in such a big way that I didn't even know in the early on. Just to be completely honest about that, like I didn't plan it all this way. I think the Lord had a bigger plan, and than I could have ever imagined. I mean, our tagline is invest better, live better, make a difference, and one investor and one child at a time. And the way that we do that is through a foundation that my wife and I started that helps families through the financial burden of adoption. It helps them to bring their children home through the adoption process that are struggling. And most people have no idea that adoption, unfortunately, the process can often cost $50,000 to $75,000. And it's just, it's very frustrating, right? It's a business for a lot of people, right? And I know they got to be paid for their time and whatnot. But man, I'm just praying that there is a better way for this process. However, these children are still stuck, right? And these families are often stuck. And we consider a ransom, right, for these children. And so we want to help as many families as we can to get past that burden. So I'll speak at conferences, Matt, just like you were talking about, and I'll talk about this why, this mission. And often, people come up afterwards and say, Whitney, my wife and I would love to adopt, but it's more than we make in a year. How could we even start the process? And so after that kept happening, we're like, wait a minute, we need to do something about this. And so we said, we're going to commit, half of my personal profits to this foundation to just say, we're going to fund as many families as we can, over the, however long. And so we said, we started a foundation. It's called OMNA, O-M-N-A-H, a foundation. And that's exactly what it's doing now. We've partnered with right about 30 families now. And it's just amazing to see what the Lord has done. We moved, I have a military background, which I know but spent a year in Iraq, came home, and then became a police officer, Kentucky State Police. And then, my wife and I just passed each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage and said, what, as much as I love this, there's got to be something else better, right? Long term. It's just such a hard family position, right? And family was going to be, just very important to us. And so I became a federal agent, and that's what took us to Virginia, where we live now. And so I did that about 10 years. And during that process, man, I took the normal path to real estate success. I bet you did this as well, and many of the listeners. I became a professional horse trainer. Okay.
Cool. Me too. Me too. Oh wow, yeah. Well, you came from Kentucky, right?
That's
I know
right.
Kentucky.
That's right.
There's horses in the water out there.
That's right.
So, right. Did you grow up with horses from Kentucky, or like
I
how did
did.
you? Okay.
I did. I grew up riding, and it was just a passion of mine since I was a little boy. I mean, since I was 2 years old, I dreamed about owning horses and being a cowboy and all that. But it wasn't until we really moved to Virginia that I got really serious about it.
All right.
And so I built
So
a
you
brand
left
around
law
it.
enforcement and got into horse training. Okay.
That's right. But I was doing that at the same time I was a federal agent. And let me back up. When I was a police officer making, say 28,000 a year, I was looking for some way to supplement my income. Right. As most of us are. And in came Rich Dad Poor Dad. And, pretty shortly after reading that book, we bought 2 triplexes in Kentucky, made a ton of mistakes, man, so much brain damage from those 2 properties, more than I would like to admit, but we learned a lot, so much. And so, but we took the federal position, moved to Virginia, sold those. And then it was a number of years before I really started pushing on real estate again. I got into horses and selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. We had the house that really probably nicer house and farm than anybody in our entire family had ever had. But Matt, my wife and I were walking on the beach one fall, and the question that kept coming up is like it ultimately was, is what we're doing right now going to get us where we want to go 5 years from now or 10 years from now even? And I was working, like 2 full-time jobs, federal agent during the day. I would come home, change as fast as I can, load the horses, go to the arena, give lessons, train horses, every day, right? And so the obvious answer to that question was absolutely not. And it just, I was making better money than I had ever imagined, honestly, and even selling horses for a lot more money than I ever imagined. But when that realization kind of hit us in the face, it was like, okay, we got to do something different, right? And I always knew that real estate could build wealth. I knew that story. I knew how many people, millions and millions of people built wealth in real estate. And so this was like September, and we said, you know what, we need to make some changes. And so by Christmas, or actually, unfortunately, the week between Christmas and New Year's, we were moving out of that farm. We had sold that place and sold everything related to the horse training business. And we say, you know what, we're committing to real estate, and we know it can build wealth, and we're burning this bridge. And no matter what anybody thinks, because everybody thought we were crazy, they said, you know what? I mean, like literally good friends, came up to us and said, oh, wait a minute, are you all okay? What's going on? All those questions, right? And out of care for us, but they couldn't understand. They couldn't see where our vision was then, right? It was bigger than the normal, what we had type vision. And so we had to commit completely, and we sold the farm to do it, right? And one thing that happened though, when we moved to Virginia, was we went and heard a pastor. He was talking about caring for orphans and widows, Matt, and he shared about the need of adoption and how there's 150 million orphans in the world. And my wife and I we were pretty newly married still, and we had never discussed adoption before. We grew up in one stoplight town. I didn't know anybody that was adopted or had ever adopted a child. This was brand new. But on the way home from this event, my wife and I, the question then was, well, why would we not adopt? It was that thankful. It was that simple to us then. If we knew how hard it was going to be, we may never have done it. I'm thankful for our ignorance, right? At the time. But we applied to adopt from Ethiopia within a week. 2 years, a long process. 2 years later, our first son, Samuel, comes home from Ethiopia. And we start the process again. Our second son, Elijah, was born into our family through adoption about 9 or 10 months later. A few years later, we started another process and brought Eden Joy, our first daughter, home through adoption. And then a few years later, we started another process. And actually, we have Selah now, who is 4 months old, who also came to our family through adoption. But Matt, the process of adoption, again, was very difficult. And especially the first couple. I mean, it just took everything we could make. It took everything, all the money we could raise from friends and family, own, all the fundraisers that we could possibly do. The third adoption process, we had a failed placement. We lost about 25 to 30,000. And you talk about just a kick in the teeth for families who have done everything to raise this money, right? And spent this much time. However, the Lord provided, even just within a few weeks from our industry, actually, for that process in an amazing way. But that just fueled our fire, Matt, to want to help other people, right? To be able to do this, and ultimately so more children could reach their forever home.
Yeah. So let's break the numbers down a little bit further. The adoption process for someone that wants to adopt, and for there's a number of reasons why people adopt. I'm adopted, as you know that, right? And I'll talk about too much on the show or to my communities or whatever, but I'm adopted, and my parents adopted me because they didn't think that they could have a child. I forgive me for using, if this is the wrong word to say, then forgive me, but naturally, right? To naturally have a child, or through the the normal process, right? Yeah. Let's say. So they didn't think they could. They adopted me, and then just some funny how these things happen sometimes, right? They ended up having my sister, who's their natural child. I'm their adopted child. They ended up having my sister a few years later because it kind of like just took the pressure off, so to speak, right? In that. So I'm very grateful for that journey. But some folks do it for that. Some folks do it, I would think, as you and your wife did it, a lot to give back, that these kids in other countries or just in other situations, you're giving them a leg up or giving them a chance, so to speak. Maybe they're, orphans or whatever it may be. In that, the process costs how much typically? You'd said that.
Like
I want to make sure you highlight it again.
50 to 70, 75,000.
50 to 70 to 75,000. That's the whole thing, right? That's
right.
The entire journey. Okay. And is that adopting just an infant, or is that a child could be 3, 4, 5 years old as well, or is that for folks that want a newborn infant? As I was 3 months old when my parents got me. So
yeah, good question. I mean, so you can be as picky as you want to be. You can say, I want a male that's 2 years old that has blonde hair and blue eyes, and but it's going to be a long time, right, before that happens. And we were just wide open. We just said, we'll take whatever the Lord gives us. And however, our first stipulation was, and actually at the time it was really early in our marriage. Like I said, in certain countries have stipulations around how long you're married, or you've been married, or different things like that before you can even adopt from there. And so Ethiopia, though, had over 5 million orphans in that one country. And so we said, you know what, we can adopt from there. There's obviously a major need. And so we started that process really quickly. It was kind of a no-brainer for us. But you have to think about, there's tons of legal things that have to be paid for, right? Especially when you're dealing with 2 countries, you're dealing with 2 governments. As another reason, it takes so long, right? And either way, there's just a lot of legal involved. But even, flights, you think about it, they called it. So even we were waiting like 18 months, Matt, before we were matched with our first son. And they call us on a Monday and say, your court appointment is in Ethiopia on Thursday. And we're like, wait a minute, like, I don't even know if we can get there, but you've been waiting that long, you're going to figure out how to get there, right? But our flights were over 10 grand for that one trip.
Stop.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, and that's not always the case, right? And our other adoptions were domestic, but there's still, agencies, adoption agencies still charge, it's really expensive, right? There's lots of agency fees, there's lots of legal fees, there's lots of travel costs, involved, oftentimes numerous trips. To wherever you're adopting from.
Wherever. Now, did you and your wife travel to Ethiopia? Sorry to go granular, but this is
just
curiosity. Hopefully the audience is getting something out of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of minutia questions that come up, but that are real, maybe for people who are curious about doing it themselves, but also for just logistics, right? Because logistics sometimes are good conversation pieces. Did you and your wife fly there to bring your son home, or was he brought home by a third-party custodian or somebody like that?
Yeah, we went there when I think he was 4 months old when we first met him. And so at that time, we had a court appointment that declared him our son. And the worst part, though, is that he's our son, but he doesn't have a visa. And so he can't leave the country. Okay, so we had to leave and come back for 3 months for the government to go through the process of giving him a visa.
Wow.
And then go back. We went back a second time to be able to bring him home after he had a visa.
So you couldn't, I guess, like, you can't run that concurrently and begin the journey of getting him a visa because he's not your son. So, I know the government works, right? You can't sign that. He's not your child yet. So I get it. Wow. What a journey. Now I understand where all that money goes, right? Yeah. Probably plenty of attorneys helping you out and,
that's right.
Just airplane tickets, right? So fast forward now, you run a vibrant real estate company that obviously this isn't a hobby for me or for you, right? We both make good money doing what we do, and that you are lucky enough to make the money that now allows you to feed this passion. So could you tell me a little bit more about what your not-for-profit does and how you're able to use your for-profit real estate business to feed that not-for-profit and allow others to contribute to it as well?
Yeah. I'll even back up and tell you how the nonprofits helped us in ways I never imagined on the business side as well.
Cool.
And when I said earlier, I never imagined the ways that the Lord had planned here, how this was going to help us. I didn't plan it this way, but I wish I had. I wish I could say that I did. But when I first started traveling, Matt, probably like you, and you're brand new to this industry, you're going to conferences like mad. You don't know anybody. You're shaking every hand that will reach a hand out to shake yours, right? I did that for a long time, right? Just like you, and just connecting as often as I can.
That's how I met you, man. I probably met you at best ever when you and I were just getting going, like probably
no doubt.
Met by the water cooler, so to speak. Like, hey man, what are you doing? I don't know what I'm doing, right? Yeah.
Right. What happened is I started starting with why, just like Simon Sinek talks about, but I hadn't read that book yet at this time. But people say, what do you do, right? And I would say, well, my wife and I have a foundation that helps families adopt children, and ultimately we fund that through our real estate investment business. So our investors get to play a role in helping these children find their forever home, but it doesn't affect their returns. And then I'm silent, right? It's quick, it's to the point, and we're not talking about multifamily. We're not talking about what markets we're in. We're not talking about whatever, right, in business, right? Because they just had that conversation 20 times over the last day at that conference, right? And so immediately I'm talking about what drives us, our mission, why we're doing what we're doing. So, all of a sudden they're telling me, or they're asking questions about adoption, they're asking questions about our kids, they're telling me about their kids or grandkids, things they're passionate about. They can see I'm passionate about this, so it changes the whole flavor and dynamic of this brand new relationship, right? And then the thing I started seeing happening, Matt, was when I would follow up, guess what? They probably talked to 20 to 100 people at that conference. They remember who I am, right? Because it's the only time they heard something like that, right, at that conference. And again, I didn't plan it that way initially, but then I started seeing that happen. And so it ultimately helped me to build relationships with lots of people that I never probably would have otherwise. It also, even during this time initially, I was still working full time. Like I told you, we moved into a part of town that wasn't that great. So we could just get rid of the farm and lower expenses so I could travel and do all this stuff. Started the daily podcast. I was going to conferences probably 3 weekends a month, for a long time. And we moved numerous times. We were in an adoption process as well. So it was just madness. I mean, to say the least, for my wife and I was like an absent father, unfortunately. Literally, I would be in the basement, often recording 12 to 15 interviews in one day for the podcast. And like nonstop. And she would literally pack me lunch to go to the basement. It was just madness. But what I was going to say is this
didn't have time to walk up the steps, right?
That's right. There wasn't. There literally wasn't. And so, what would happen is, that this mission though was something that my wife was also passionate about. Right. And so she couldn't have cared less about if I had said I want to be the best real estate investor I possibly can, or if I had stayed training horses and been the best I possibly could, I know she would have supported me. Right. However, this mission though was something that we were both behind in a big way. Right. And so during that time, when times were really tough, when we're, a crucial time was us being up early together in the mornings just to talk about our days and what's going on with the kids and whatnot. But that mission was something that fueled both of us to continue going as well.
That's great. Could you say the name of the not-for-profit one more time so folks can hear more about it, reach out, maybe even make a contribution?
It's called Omnah Foundation. It's OMNAH Foundation.
OMNAH. Is there a meaning behind that, or what's that word mean?
Yes. So it's when Mordecai so it's Hebrew for to nurture and to care for a child. Okay. And so that's where it comes from. And so, to nurture and to care for a child. It's Hebrew.
That's great. I love deep meanings like that. Thank you. So fast forward to today, through your real estate ventures, as I understand, you're taking a portion of your proceeds when your company does a deal or when you guys have success points in a deal process, you're putting some of your proceeds into that. And you're also allowing folks that want to just contribute direct to that to do it. So how many adoptions has completed so far?
About 30. I think we're partnered with almost 40 families now, but I think almost 30 have actually brought children home so far. So it's a big process. And just to clarify, it's personal
amazing.
Profits. It's not total, company profits, but yeah, it's about 30 families.
I get it. We should clarify that. You're not taking a portion of the investor side. Your investors are still getting 100% win. And my bet, again, I don't even know, I'm going to speculate. My bet is that you probably have some of your investors that are taking a portion of their proceeds when they win with you and pushing it over to Omnah as well, because they believe in your mission, right?
It's been encouraging to see that and them partner even on a monthly basis, with the foundation, many of our investors.
That's great, but they're not. That means they're aligned, right? But that doesn't mean you're mandating them doing it in that. But yeah, it's really inspiring. What is the goal for this year? What I'm sure the agency, as you said, KPIs, goals, that kind of thing. What goals does your organization for 2024 for funding adoptions?
Yeah, we would love to partner with at least 20 families this year and possibly 25. We'd love to raise $500,000. That would be a major stretch goal for us, in 1 year from donors, outside donors.
Yeah, that's great. Those are 20 to 25 kids. They're going to get a great home. They're going to get a fresh start and everything like that. So as I did, and as your children did, they were lucky enough to be, through grace put in your home. That's great. It's really a testament to a deeper mission. We had a friend of both of ours, Paul Moore, on the show for Giving Tuesday, talking about his mission, which is just as admirable as yours is with regards to, human trafficking and everything like that. Maybe there's outlets there that are kind of like a child gets aided out of the human trafficking industry and then eventually pushed over to adoption. Who knows, right? Maybe it helps that way to get them into a better home. But the folks like you and Paul are doing great work in the world by running good businesses centered around real estate that have a ginormous why associated with it. It does not necessarily have to be, guys, to have a big house and a Ferrari. It can certainly be to make a difference in the world and fund the adoption of up to 40 kids and give them great homes in that in the long run. So thank you, Whitney, for doing that. Commend you. Let's transition real quick. Let's say you're a seasoned operator. I'm going to ask you to bust out your crystal ball here. and tell me where you think the world is headed with regards to multifamily. Are you a doom and gloom, blood in the streets? Oh my goodness, everything just got cut to a quarter of what it was last week in valuation. Are you everything's going to keep going, party's going to keep going, a little bit in the middle? Where are you for 2024? What are you seeing, and what do you think is going to happen?
I ask a ton of people this same question, Matt, and I say, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but however, what you think affects what you do. And so tell me what you're thinking, and it's so true, right? I mean, what you think, it affects whether you're buying or selling or whatever. For us, I just stress to people, it's like, stick to the guidelines that you should stick to, right? It almost doesn't matter. And just like not doing a deal for this long, right? And us too, right? We did do a deal this past year, but one, And so, how many times have we said no? And looking back now, hey, we're so thankful that we did, right? And so know your criteria, right? That you're going to use to buy deals, even the type of debt, right? Obviously now, a lot of people are learning that the hard way too. And so it's like, know, why you're buying something. And so for us, I guess for me personally, I expect rates to come down some this year eventually, and maybe that opens up some more buying opportunities. I'm not a doom and gloom. I don't think, the U.S. is just going to burn down. And if it does, we're all going to have bigger problems, right, than our real estate deals, right? But I encourage people to, like, be careful about what you're taking in, right? I get YouTube notifications all the time, and sometimes it's obviously clickbait of houses on fire and all that stuff, and I try to turn that stuff off because I'm like, it's just not good for me, it's not good for my mind, and that's why I want to have that criteria. And hey, we're just going to keep looking, we're going to keep underwriting, we're going to keep beating the bushes, and when we find something great, and if it doesn't meet what we need it to meet, then we're going to pass.
Yeah, they say, Henry Ford said it, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And if you listen to the wrong media outlets, you will get the wrong mindset that'll tell you that everything's falling apart and Chicken Little and all that other kind of stuff. And just you and I might as well just hide under our beds and wait for the storm to blow over, so to speak, right? While we would be doing that, there would be people out doing deals.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean you should do any deal. This is not the market where you just go and grab whatever you can get your hands on. But we're still seeing opportunities. Are we seeing as many opportunities as we did in 2018, 19, 20? No way. Yeah, or even in 21. No. So it'll be a little funky, a little weird for a little bit. But I think that the operators that are able to continue to thrive in 2024 through the tips that Whitney gave about just monitoring your debt. I'll give one more that I tell folks that'll, anybody to listen to me about it. As Whitney said, monitor your debt, but also, guys, monitor your market. So I don't think the successful operator is the one that's shopping in, let's say, Whitney, 15, 20 markets across the United States. I know one of yours is, I'm about to say Golden, Colorado, but that's not right. Boulder, right?
Yeah, Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Colorado Springs,
and Vail.
Yeah. So those markets, but you might not hear Whitney talking about Oklahoma City and Topeka, Kansas, and here and here and here, because seasoned operators, the folks that Whitney and I respect, our friends, right, are not buying in 20, 30 markets across the continental United States. They're likely buying in 2, maybe 3, maybe 1, right? And I think success, especially in a changing market like this, is going to be in picking. If you're trying to rise in today's multifamily space, picking one market, not 2, not 10, one market, and choosing that as your playground for the next 6 to 12 months, and infiltrating, pushing in, getting to know the brokers, getting to know the owners, getting to know the bad deals, the good deals, the stuff that's having problems, the property managers, getting to know everybody, and becoming an expert on that one market. When a good deal comes up, it's likely to be an off-the-market deal. It's not going to go on LoopNet.
We would love your support, obviously, at Omna. These children, 100% of donations go directly to families, and so we would love for your partnership there, with those families as well. Obviously, you can find me on about any social media outlet, or Whitney at lifebridgecapital.com.
Whitney at lifebridgecapital and lifebridgecapital.com, and the Whitney Sewell on Instagram. Whitney, always a pleasure to see you, man. You are a ray of sunshine in the real estate world. Thank you for all you do. I do hope our paths cross. Last year, I was lucky enough to have a booth across the exhibit.
That's right.
From Whitney it wasn't, you're not for profit. It was LifeBridge, right?
That's right.
Yeah, got it. So yeah, I hope to see you at Best Ever. We'll be out there again. And I know our paths will cross in this real estate world very soon again, in one way or another. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Cashflow Digest.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you very much.
Thanks, Whitney. Hey guys, Matt Faircloth here. Thank you for listening again to the Cashflow Digest. I really appreciate you guys doing that. If you guys want to hear more about what DeRosa Group has to offer, go to DeRosa Group, DeRosa Group.com, DeRosaGroup.com online. You can hear about all the great things that we offer from an educational standpoint and passive investment standpoint on our website. See you there. And if you guys want to join our online community, DeRosa Insiders on Facebook, where you can watch this program get recorded every Friday at noon Eastern, and you can come on as even a guest or ask questions on the show. We hope to see you guys on our online community, DeRosa Insiders. See you there.